After hundreds of 12-hour shifts in hostile war zones, I dreamed of returning to the man I loved. I was completely wrong. He used 100% of my hazard pay to construct a fortress of lies. When I discovered the secret mortgage, I realized the real war awaited in my own living room. He forgot one fatal detail. A woman trained to dismantle global risks knows exactly how to destroy a fake life. Hello, everyone. Before today's story begins, we'd like to share a quick message. YouTube recently removed our monetization, cutting off our income. If you enjoy this story, we humbly ask for just $1 to help pay our staff so they can make a living and keep creating for you. Thank you for saving us. Now, let's begin the story. I am a senior risk analyst for a private military contractor known as Apex Global Security. For the past 18 months, my entire existence has been confined to a heavily fortified compound in one of the most volatile regions on the planet. My daily routine consists of analyzing threat patterns, mapping hostile territories, and ensuring our personnel make it back alive from their missions. It is a life measured in high-stress shifts, lasting 14, sometimes 16 hours a day. The air here always tastes of dust and diesel fuel. Sleep is a luxury constantly interrupted by the wail of proximity alarms. I accepted this grueling deployment for one specific reason. I wanted to secure a flawless, financially stable future for my impending marriage. Back in the United States, nestled in the peaceful, rain-washed city of Cresthaven, was Julian Ross. Julian was my fiancé, the man I trusted with my life and my livelihood. While I dodged localized threats and lived in tactical gear, he remained in the comfort of our rented apartment. Our arrangement was built on absolute trust. I would endure the danger and send every extra dollar home, while he managed our joint financial accounts and handled the intricate preparations for our wedding. I envisioned him tasting cakes, securing the perfect venue, and building the foundation of our life together. That beautiful mirage was my only escape. Whenever the pressure of the war zone threatened to break my spirit, I would close my eyes and picture walking through the front door of a home we built together. However, as the months dragged on, the vibrant connection we once shared began to wither. At first, the changes were subtle. Our daily, hour-long video calls were gradually reduced to brief, sporadic audio messages. He stopped asking about my safety. When I finally managed to secure a reliable satellite line after a brutal operational week, his responses were consistently clipped and impatient. He constantly used his recent promotion at his corporate marketing firm as a shield. I am absolutely drowning in these new quarterly forecasts. He would sigh loudly into the receiver, making sure I heard the exhaustion in his voice. I cannot focus on wedding details right now. The executive board is breathing down my neck. We will figure everything out when you get back. He deflected any attempt at a deep conversation. He rushed to end the calls, leaving me sitting in the suffocating heat of my canvas tent, listening to the hollow dial tone. I convinced myself it was just a temporary rough patch. I was wrong. The illusion shattered entirely on a Tuesday evening. I had just finished compiling a casualty risk report when my encrypted personal tablet vibrated. It was a high-priority automated alert from our stateside bank. The notification detailed a massive, unauthorized wire transfer. Someone had just moved nearly $200,000 directly out of our joint savings account. That was the entirety of my hazard pay. Every single cent I had bled for over the last year and a half. I stared at the digital receipt until my eyes burned. The money meant for our future home and our wedding was completely gone, vanished into an unknown routing number. A cold, rational panic gripped my chest. I immediately grabbed the satellite phone and dialed Julian. The phone rang 6 times before he finally picked up. "Where did the money go, Julian?" I demanded, skipping any form of greeting. His reaction was entirely wrong. There was no shock, no shared panic. Instead, he let out a practiced, condescending sigh. "Please, you are overreacting. It is just a massive network error. The bank system has been malfunctioning all week. I already spent 2 hours on the phone with their customer service department. They flagged it as an internal routing glitch and are doing a manual trace. The funds will be restored in 3 to 5 business days. Just focus on your work and let me handle things here. My profession revolves entirely around identifying deception. I am trained to locate the tiny inconsistencies in human behavior that signal an ambush. Julian was lying. His voice was far too steady. His explanation far too rehearsed. A man who just lost his life savings does not sound annoyed. He sounds terrified. The survival instinct that kept me alive in hostile territories kicked into overdrive. I ended the call abruptly. I needed independent verification. I bypassed my usual contacts and sent a secure message to Mrs. Gable, the observant, elderly woman who lived across the hall from our Cresthaven apartment. I asked her if she could knock on our door to check on Julian, inventing a story about a misdelivered care package. The next 45 minutes were pure agony. I paced the concrete floor of the operations center, my mind racing through terrifying permutations. Finally, her reply arrived. "Oh, my dear," the message read. I went over, but the door was wide open. I peeked inside to make sure he was safe. The apartment is completely gutted. There is no furniture, no clothes, nothing. It looks like it has been abandoned for weeks. I stood frozen in the middle of the desert. The hostile environment outside the compound walls suddenly felt entirely harmless compared to the betrayal waiting for me back home. The man I loved had not just taken my money, he had erased our entire existence. The moment I read that text message from my neighbor, the woman who loved Julian Ross ceased to exist. In her place, the senior risk analyst took total control. I wiped the tears from my face and locked the door to my quarters. I sat down at my reinforced field desk and opened my encrypted laptop. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a fraction of a second before I dove into the digital abyss. I had spent my entire career tracking international arms dealers, untangling complex money laundering schemes, and predicting the movements of hostile insurgents. A cheating partner attempting a domestic financial crime was child's play by comparison. I utilized a secure military network protocol to bypass standard commercial restrictions, gaining direct access to deep-level financial registries. The bank claimed the funds were lost in a network error. But data never truly vanishes. It merely leaves a different kind of footprint. It took me exactly 47 minutes to pierce through the obfuscation. The wire transfer had not bounced into a void. It had landed squarely in an escrow account managed by a premier real estate firm operating in the most affluent zip codes of our home state. With the destination confirmed, I pulled the county property tax records and newly registered deeds. The search query returned a hit almost immediately. A sprawling piece of luxury real estate had just closed. I stared at the digital copy of the deed, feeling a profound, glacial chill radiate through my veins. The property was a magnificent modern estate located in the whispered-about, gated hills outside the city. It boasted 6 bedrooms, an infinity pool, and a custom security perimeter. The purchase price was nearly $3 million, but it was the down payment section that made my breath catch. The required upfront cash to secure the mortgage was exactly $198,500. That was the precise amount siphoned from my hazard pay, down to the final cent. Then, I looked at the signatures at the bottom of the document. There was Julian's familiar, messy scrawl, a signature I had seen on birthday cards and lease agreements. Right next to his name, listed as the primary co-owner, was a name I had never seen before in my life: Clara Vance. The sheer audacity of his crime paralyzed me for a moment. He had not just stolen my money, he had used the blood, sweat, and terror of my military deployment to buy a hidden paradise for another woman. As I was committing Clara Vance's name to memory, a sharp knock on my door broke my concentration. One of the logistics officers handed me a battered cardboard box. It was a care package from the States. The return address boldly listed our old apartment in Cresthaven, the very same apartment my neighbor had just confirmed was entirely abandoned. I sliced the tape open with my tactical knife. Inside lay a pathetic assortment of cheap protein bars, a generic brand of coffee, and a sealed envelope smelling faintly of his familiar cologne. I unfolded the handwritten letter. "My dearest Morgan." The letter began, I am sitting here in our living room, looking at the empty space on the couch where you belong. The apartment feels so cold and hollow without you. Work is still an absolute nightmare. But every time I feel like giving up, I think about the beautiful future we are building together right here. Please stay safe. I'm counting down the days until I can hold you in our home again. Forever yours, Julian. A visceral wave of nausea washed over me. The level of sociopathic detachment required to pen those loving words from the comfort of a stolen luxury mansion was staggering. He believed I was a naive, exhausted soldier trapped in a desert, completely isolated from the truth. He thought he had committed the perfect crime. I did not scream. And I did not smash the framed photograph of us sitting on my desk. Instead, I established an encrypted, untraceable video link to a ruthless civil litigation attorney based in New York. Her name was Evelyn, a woman renowned for dismantling fraudulent corporate executives with surgical precision. I laid out the evidence, showing her the unauthorized wire transfer, the property deed, the fake letters, and the timeline of his deception. He is using your hazard pay as clean capital to secure a mortgage under false pretenses, Evelyn stated, her voice sharp and devoid of sympathy, which was exactly what I needed. We need to move silently. If we freeze the accounts now, he will panic, move the remaining assets, and claim it was a mutual investment misunderstanding. We need an airtight trap. I do not just want my money back, Evelyn, I replied, my voice steady and cold. I want him to lose everything he thinks he has built. I want the foundation of that house to legally crumble beneath his feet. We devised a covert strategy. Evelyn would begin secretly filing the necessary subpoenas and drafting the asset-freezing injunctions, keeping everything sealed under judicial order until the absolute perfect moment. My job was far more psychologically demanding. I had to maintain the illusion that his flawless plan was working perfectly. I pulled out a piece of stationery and grabbed a pen. I forced my hand to write words of longing and affection. I told him how much his care package meant to me, how exhausted I was from the relentless patrols, and how I yearned to return to the simple comfort of our rented apartment. I painted the picture of a tired, clueless woman desperately clinging to the image of her faithful fiancé. I sealed the envelope with a steady hand. Julian wanted a war of deception, and I was about to show him what a true veteran of psychological warfare could do. 72 hours after I sent my fake letter of devotion, my secure terminal pinged. Evelyn had delivered the comprehensive background dossier on Clara Vance. I opened the encrypted file, and the sheer audacity of the betrayal made the blood roaring in my ears come to a sudden, dead halt. Clara was not just some random wealthy woman he had met at a coffee shop. She was the senior vice president of corporate strategy at the exact same marketing firm where my fiancé worked. She was the very same executive who had supposedly recognized his hard work and granted him that massive promotion just a few weeks prior. That promotion was not a reward for his corporate brilliance or his late nights at the office. It was a transactional down payment for his services as a financial mule. Evelyn had dug deep into the complex financial architecture of Clara's life. Clara was married to a notoriously ruthless real estate magnate, a man who controlled half the commercial property in the entire state. Their marriage was bound by an incredibly strict, ironclad prenuptial agreement. If Clara was caught committing infidelity or attempting to hide marital assets, she would be stripped of her position and walk away from the marriage with absolutely nothing. Clara desperately wanted a private sanctuary, a secret love nest where she could play house with her new subordinate toy. However, she could not move a single dollar of her own vast wealth without her husband's army of forensic accountants flagging the suspicious transaction. She needed a ghost. She needed someone with a perfectly clean financial background and a sudden influx of untraceable, legitimate cash to act as the face of the purchase. Julian provided the absolute perfect solution. He served up the hazard pay I had earned by dodging shrapnel and surviving chronic sleep deprivation. He handed over my blood money to act as the pristine, legitimate cash deposit for their hidden paradise. Evelyn had also managed to legally acquire a series of deleted digital communications between the two lovers. Reading their text messages was like swallowing crushed glass. Julian had meticulously outlined his exit strategy. The exact week she returns from deployment, I will initiate the breakup. One of his messages to Clara read, I will tell her the distance broke our bond. I have already drafted a fake investment portfolio showing our savings were wiped out in a startup collapse. She will be too exhausted to fight it. He intended to leave me emotionally destroyed and completely broke, while he walked away with half the equity of a multi-million-dollar luxury mansion. The sheer, calculated cruelty of his plan snapped something deep inside my mind. The exhausted, heartbroken woman vanished completely, replaced entirely by a cold, operational machine. I immediately marched into my commanding officer's tent and invoked a highly classified emergency leave protocol. I cited a catastrophic psychological family crisis that required my immediate presence stateside, given my spotless service record and the extreme stress of my current position. My request was granted within a matter of hours. I packed only my tactical gear, my heavy weather clothing, and my advanced surveillance equipment. I did not send a single text message to Julian. I did not make a single phone call to my family. I boarded a noisy military transport plane under the cover of absolute darkness, disappearing from the desert without leaving a single trace behind. 24 hours later, I touched down on American soil. The air was cool and smelled of rain, a stark contrast to the burning dust I was used to. I bypassed our old city entirely and drove a nondescript rental car straight into the affluent, winding hills where their new estate was located. I did not charge in blindly. I approached the situation exactly as I would a hostile insurgent compound. I located a small, rundown boutique motel situated on a rocky ridge exactly 1 mile across the valley from their heavily guarded, gated community. I paid the motel manager in advance using untraceable cash for a corner room on the second floor. It was a room that offered a completely unobstructed, panoramic view of their luxury driveway and the main entrance of the house. I spent the next 12 hours transforming the dingy, faded motel room into an absolute command center. I pushed the cheap bed against the wall and mounted high-powered telephoto lenses onto heavy steel tripods, pressing the thick glass right against the dirty window panes. I set up digital recording devices, establishing a continuous 24-hour surveillance feed of their front gate. I memorized their daily routines with clinical precision. I logged the license plates of every single vehicle that entered and exited the property. I watched them live the beautiful, peaceful life that I had paid for with my own physical and mental decay. I survived on cold coffee and adrenaline, never taking my eyes off the target. The true breaking point arrived on the afternoon of my third day in the motel room. The sun was shining brightly, casting a warm, golden glow over the perfectly manicured lawns of their stolen kingdom. A massive, premium delivery truck pulled up to their grand front door. Through the powerful magnifying glass of my camera lens, I watched Julian and Clara emerge from the house. They were dressed in matching designer casual wear, holding hands and laughing freely under the clear blue sky. The delivery drivers unloaded a gigantic, custom-made velvet sectional sofa, a piece of furniture that easily cost more than a standard luxury vehicle. Julian playfully grabbed one end of the heavy sofa, flexing his arms to impress her as he helped the movers guide it through the grand double doors of the foyer. Clara wrapped her arms around his waist from behind, pressing a lingering, affectionate kiss to his shoulder. They looked so sickeningly happy, so completely secure and comfortable in their fortress of lies. I kept my eye pressed against the hard plastic of the viewfinder, forcing myself to endure every single second of their joy. My hands gripped the metallic edges of the camera until my knuckles turned completely white and my joints ached. A hot, stinging tear broke free and rolled down my cheek, quickly followed by another. It was not a tear of sorrow or heartbreak. It was a tear of pure, unadulterated, blinding rage. Every freezing night I spent shivering in a reinforced bunker. Every deafening explosion that had rattled my teeth in my skull. Every moment of sheer, paralyzing terror I had endured in the war zone had been harvested just to buy that velvet sofa. They were building their flawless dream life directly on top of my open wounds. I watched the doors close behind them, shutting out the world. I slowly pulled my face away from the camera and wiped the tears from my cheeks. My vision cleared with an absolute, deadly focus. The time for gathering intelligence from the shadows was officially over. The storm was ready to make landfall. Under the cover of a completely moonless night, I slipped out of my rented motel room and bypassed the gated community's perimeter security sensors. My tactical field training made the manicured hedges and decorative wrought iron fences feel like a child's playground. I approached the massive stone pillar that housed their highly secure custom-built mailbox. Using a specialized military-grade lock-picking tool, I popped the heavy steel door open in under 15 seconds. Inside the dark cavity was a thick, rigid manila envelope bearing the silver logo of a premium insurance brokerage. I carefully slid the documents out, keeping them shielded from the sweeping motion sensor security lights. It was the comprehensive homeowner's insurance policy. I used my encrypted field phone to scan every single page in high resolution. The policy explicitly listed Julian Ross and Clara Vance as domestic cohabitants. More importantly, the billing section detailed the precise routing numbers used for the exorbitant monthly premium payments. These were hidden accounts secretly linked to Clara's offshore shell companies, carefully designed to bypass her powerful husband's army of forensic auditors. She was funneling her immense wealth through Julian's pristine financial record to keep the house a secret. I placed the documents exactly as I found them, locked the box without leaving a single scratch, and vanished back into the shadows. I now possessed the final, undeniable piece of the financial puzzle. The next morning, I did not bother to schedule an appointment. I dressed in a razor-sharp, dark charcoal business suit, concealing my muscular military frame beneath tailored wool. I drove downtown and walked directly into the towering, gleaming glass headquarters of Vance Real Estate Holdings. Clara's husband, Elliot Vance, was a man whose reputation for corporate ruthlessness was legendary across the eastern seaboard. He was a titan known for bankrupting rival development firms before his morning coffee. I bypassed his 3 panicked executive assistants by calmly stating I possessed classified financial intelligence regarding his wife that would directly impact the firm's stock value by tens of millions of dollars. Within 5 minutes of that threat, I was escorted by armed security and seated across from him in his sprawling, minimalist penthouse office. "You have exactly 2 minutes to justify breaching my inner office before I have you arrested for corporate espionage," Elliot stated, his voice a low, dangerous rumble that commanded absolute authority. I did not flinch. I did not offer any polite pleasantries. I unclasped my heavy leather briefcase and slid a meticulously organized, 3-inch thick binder across the polished mahogany desk. "Your wife, Clara, is currently laundering hundreds of thousands of dollars through a subordinate marketing employee named Julian Ross to deliberately bypass the ironclad clauses of your prenuptial agreement," I stated with glacial calm. "She used my stolen hazard pay as the clean foundation to purchase a $3 million luxury estate in the hills. Inside that binder are the unredacted property deeds, the unauthorized wire transfers, the illicit insurance policies, and high-definition photographs of them cohabitating in the property you technically own." Elliot opened the binder for 20 agonizing minutes. The only sound in the cavernous room was the slow, deliberate turning of crisp paper. I watched his heavy jaw clench tightly. The thick veins in his temples throbbed as the undeniable reality of his wife's betrayal materialized before his eyes. When he finally looked up from the documents, his eyes were completely devoid of human warmth. They were the cold, dead eyes of an apex predator whose absolute territory had been violated. "What is your exact objective here, Miss Allen?" he asked quietly, his voice dangerously soft. "Total and absolute annihilation," I replied without a single moment of hesitation. "I want to dismantle Julian's entire existence until he has nothing left but the clothes on his back. I want him rotting in a federal prison cell. And I want her legally stripped of every single financial asset she possesses under your marriage contract. A terrifying, wolfish smile slowly spread across Elliot's weathered face. I will deploy my entire legal team immediately. We will coordinate our strikes with your counsel. When the dust finally settles on this mess, they will not even have the dirt beneath their fingernails. We have a deal. With a billionaire titan officially backing my covert play, I returned to my vehicle and moved to sever the enemy's supply lines. I sat in my rental car and executed a series of secure digital commands. I completely rerouted my direct deposit payroll from Apex Global Security, transferring my combat salary into a newly created, untraceable offshore trust account. I systematically closed every single joint credit card, canceled our shared emergency lines of credit, and permanently terminated the auto-pay functions that were keeping Julian's lavish new lifestyle afloat. He was officially cut off from his primary blood supply. He was a dead man walking financially, and he did not even know his accounts were bleeding out. Simultaneously, Evelyn, my ruthless attorney, struck the first devastating legal blow. Armed with the irrefutable evidence I had gathered and the terrifying covert backing of Elliot's corporate legal juggernaut, she filed an emergency ex parte injunction with the state Supreme Court. We placed a massive, ironclad financial lien on the luxury estate. The legal filing definitively proved that the entire structural equity of the house was founded on stolen military funds. As of 3 o'clock that afternoon, Julian and Clara could not sell, refinance, or leverage a single brick of that property. The house was now a beautiful $3 million prison. I was parked on a quiet, tree-lined street, just 1 block away from the grand entrance of their stolen mansion, when my encrypted phone began to vibrate violently. The caller screen flashed Julian's name. I took a slow, deep breath, perfectly regulating my rising heart rate, and answered the call. "Hey, sweetheart," Julian rasped, his voice dripping with fake, pitiful exhaustion. "I am so sorry I missed your call yesterday. I have been violently ill. I am lying here in bed at our old apartment. The apartment heater is broken again, and I just feel so cold and miserable. I wish you were here to make me soup and take care of me." I stared through the windshield at the imposing iron gates of his new neighborhood. Through the high-powered binoculars resting on my dashboard, I could see the blazing lights from the massive windows of his new infinity pool deck. He was standing outside on the expensive cedar balcony, wearing a silk robe, holding a crystal glass of expensive red wine, looking out over the beautiful valley while he lied directly into my ear. "I am so incredibly sorry you are feeling sick, Julian," I said, my voice smooth and dripping with fabricated sympathy. "I know how hard you're working for our future together. You just need to rest and stay warm in the apartment. I will be home to take care of you before you know it. I love you so much, Morgan. You are my absolute rock," he murmured smoothly, taking a long sip of his vintage wine. "I love you too, Julian," I replied softly. "Enjoy your evening." I disconnected the line and slowly lowered the phone to my lap. The sheer, unadulterated sociopathy of his performance was breathtaking. He felt completely untouchable. He had no idea that the woman he was lying to was sitting barely 500 feet away from his balcony, holding the financial detonator that was about to blow his entire universe to ash. For 14 agonizing days, I remained a ghost in that cramped motel room. I survived on tepid water and stale bread, completely consumed by the mission. I watched their catering vendors arrive to measure the walkways. I cataloged the massive floral deliveries. Through my digital surveillance feeds, I intercepted the electronic invitations for their grand housewarming gala. The event was scheduled for a Friday evening. They had invited the absolute pinnacle of the city elite, top-tier corporate executives, local politicians, and high society socialites were all on the exclusive guest list. It was intended to be Clara and Julian's triumphant debut as a powerful new couple. They were preparing to parade their stolen wealth in front of the world, solidifying their fake empire. When the night of the party finally arrived, the sky was a deep, bruised purple, heavy with the suffocating humidity of an impending thunderstorm. By 8 in the evening, The long circular driveway of the sprawling estate was completely choked with imported luxury sedans and high-performance sports cars. Valet attendants dressed in crisp white shirts sprinted frantically back and forth to manage the overwhelming influx of wealthy guests. The soft, elegant notes of a live string quartet drifted through the warm night air, mingling seamlessly with the arrogant, booming laughter of the upper class. I did not wear a designer gown. I did not bother to style my hair or apply a single drop of cosmetics to my tired face. Instead, I opened my tactical duffel bag and pulled out the exact same combat uniform I had worn during my last extraction mission in the desert. The heavy protective fabric was still stained with pale, alkaline dust. The reinforced knee pads were heavily scuffed from crawling across harsh terrain. My tactical boots were caked in dried mud from a foreign continent. I strapped on my utility belt, feeling the familiar, comforting weight of my equipment settling against my hips. I looked exactly like a soldier who had just walked straight out of a brutal war zone, because in every way that truly mattered, I absolutely was. I left my discreet rental car parked half a mile down the winding, tree-lined road and approached the estate on foot under the cover of darkness. The private security guards hired for the evening were thoroughly distracted by a minor collision between two valet drivers near the main iron gates. I utilized my professional infiltration training to slip through the side perimeter, moving silently across the perfectly manicured, damp lawn. I bypassed the glowing outdoor patio heaters and walked directly toward the massive, open double doors of the grand entrance. The sheer scale of the opulence inside the foyer was deeply offensive. Massive crystal chandeliers hung from the soaring vaulted ceilings, casting a brilliant, fracturing light over the crowded room. Professional waiters in pristine tuxedos glided smoothly through the living space, carrying silver trays loaded with tall champagne flutes and expensive imported caviar. The air was thick and heavy with the combined scent of rich floral perfumes and roasted culinary delicacies. I stepped over the threshold, my heavy combat boots thudding softly but firmly against the imported Italian marble floors. I made zero attempts to blend into the environment. I walked straight into the exact center of the grand living room. I was a solitary, brutal monument of harsh reality, cutting aggressively through a delicate sea of fine silk and tailored wool. The reaction happened in slow, rolling waves. First, the wealthy guests standing nearest to the grand entrance noticed me. Their polite, hushed conversations abruptly died in their throats. They stepped back instinctively, their eyes wide with profound confusion and rapidly rising alarm, automatically clearing a wide, empty path for me. The tense silence spread through the room like a highly contagious virus. The live string quartet faltered, the lead cellist missing a crucial beat before the music completely ground to a miserable, screeching halt. Within 60 seconds, a massive room containing nearly 100 people fell into a breathless, terrifying, dead quiet. The only sound left in the cavernous space was the heavy, rhythmic thud of my boots striking the floor. Then, I finally saw him. Julian was standing at the far end of the room near the custom-carved marble fireplace. He was wearing a flawless, custom-tailored velvet dinner jacket that likely cost more than my entire first year of military salary. He was laughing arrogantly at a joke, holding a delicate crystal glass of dark red wine in his right hand. Clara was clinging tightly to his left arm, wearing a blindingly expensive diamond necklace that fiercely caught the chandelier light. I stopped exactly 10 feet away from them and simply stared into his eyes. Julian slowly turned his head to see what had caused the sudden, oppressive silence in the room. His eyes locked onto mine. The physical transformation was absolutely spectacular to witness. Every single drop of blood instantly drained from his face, leaving him with the sickly pallor of a rotting corpse. His jaw fell completely open, but his vocal cords refused to produce any sound. The muscles in his right hand went completely slack in shock. The delicate crystal wine glass slipped straight through his numb fingers and shattered violently against the hard marble floor. The dark red liquid splashed aggressively across his polished leather shoes, looking exactly like fresh blood spreading across a battlefield. He was staring at a woman he firmly believed was currently sleeping in a fortified concrete bunker 10,000 miles away. "Good evening, everyone." I projected my voice with the clear, commanding authority of a military officer. I did not yell. I did not scream. I spoke with a terrifying, icy calmness that echoed sharply off the high walls. "I sincerely apologize for not adhering to the formal dress code this evening. My military transport flight out of the combat zone was slightly delayed." The elite crowd remained utterly paralyzed, their gazes darting wildly between my dusty combat uniform and Julian's terrified, trembling face. I offered the room a sharp, merciless smile. "Please, do not let my sudden arrival ruin the wonderful festivities. I simply wanted to introduce myself to all of you. My name is Morgan Allen. I am the senior risk analyst who spent the last 18 months dodging mortar fire to earn the hazard pay that fully funded the massive down payment for this magnificent property. You are all currently drinking expensive champagne under a beautiful roof built entirely on my stolen wages." The collective gasp from the elite crowd was incredibly loud. The suffocating, a heavy tension in the room instantly snapped into chaos. Clara reacted with pure, volatile panic. Her carefully constructed facade of high society elegance completely disintegrated into pieces. Her face flushed a dark, furious crimson red. She pointed a violently shaking finger directly at my chest, her voice pitching upward into a hysterical, shrill scream that hurt the ears. "Security!" Clara shrieked at the top of her lungs, her voice echoing painfully in the large room. "Get the security team in here immediately. This lunatic is trespassing. I want her physically removed from my private property right now. Drag this crazy woman out into the street." Two large men in black suits began to push their way aggressively through the frightened crowd from the kitchen corridor, their hands reaching for the communication radios clipped to their thick belts. Julian, meanwhile, was completely unraveling under the pressure. His desperate survival instinct kicked in, but it was pathetic and deeply flawed. He frantically wiped the cold sweat from his forehead and stepped in front of Clara, turning his back to me to face the whispering crowd. He held up his hands in a desperate, begging gesture of innocence, attempting to deploy the ultimate psychological manipulation maneuver. "Everyone, please just stay calm," Julian stammered, his voice cracking pitifully as he sweated through his expensive velvet jacket. "Do not listen to a single word she says. This woman is completely unhinged. She is an obsessive, delusional stalker from my past. She has been aggressively harassing me for months because she simply cannot accept that I moved on with my life. She is incredibly dangerous and deeply mentally ill. She fabricated this entire financial story just to publicly humiliate me and destroy my beautiful new life with Clara." He turned back around to look at me, his eyes wide with a pathetic mixture of absolute terror and desperate pleading. He was begging me silently to break down, to act crazy, to give the crowd a legitimate reason to believe his frantic lies. He wanted me to scream and throw things so the security guards could drag me away as a hysterical, jealous ex-partner. I simply stood my ground, my hands resting loosely near my tactical belt, completely unbothered by his pathetic theatrical performance. I knew the security guards were closing in fast. I knew the entire crowd was watching my every single breath. But I also knew something they did not. The real explosion had not even detonated yet. The two massive security guards lunged toward me, their thick hands reaching to violently grab my tactical vest. Before their fingers could even graze the heavy fabric, a booming, thunderous voice echoed from the top of the grand curved staircase above us. "If either of you lays a single finger on that woman, you will both be facing a federal lawsuit before midnight." Every single head in the massive living room snapped upward in perfect unison. Elliot Vance, the undisputed titan of the Eastern Seaboard real estate empire, and Clara's legal husband, was slowly descending the sweeping marble steps. He was impeccably dressed in a bespoke dark navy suit, projecting an aura of absolute, terrifying power that sucked the remaining oxygen out of the room. The private security guards immediately froze in their tracks, backing away with their hands raised submissively in the air. They instantly recognized the man who owned the security firm that signed their corporate paychecks. Clara let out a horrifying gasp, the sound choking in her throat like a dying animal. She stumbled backward away from Julian, her expensive designer heels slipping dangerously on the spilled red wine. Elliot reached the bottom of the staircase and walked directly toward his trembling wife. He did not scream. He did not lose his temper. His cold, calculating silence was infinitely more destructive than any physical blow. He reached into the inside pocket of his tailored jacket, pulled out a thick, heavy stack of legal documents, and threw them violently against Clara's chest. The crisp papers scattered wildly across the polished marble floor, landing directly in front of the dozens of glowing smartphone cameras that the wealthy guests had eagerly raised to record the unprecedented high society spectacle. Those are the expedited divorce filings and the emergency judicial asset freezing orders, Elliot stated, his deep voice ringing with lethal precision across the dead quiet room. Your offshore shell accounts have been completely liquidated by my forensic accounting team. Your corporate executive access cards have been permanently deactivated as of 10 minutes ago. You are officially in breach of the absolute infidelity clause in our prenuptial agreement. You are leaving my marriage exactly the way you entered it, with absolutely nothing to your name. Clara collapsed to her knees, ruining her silk dress in the puddle of wine. She desperately scrambled to gather the scattered legal papers with violently trembling hands, weeping and begging Elliot to listen to her, but he simply looked right through her as if she were completely invisible. While Clara was financially executed on the floor, I turned my full, cold attention back to Julian. He was hyperventilating uncontrollably, his panicked eyes darting frantically toward the massive front doors, as if calculating the odds of a desperate physical escape into the dark woods. I reached into my tactical thigh pouch and retrieved the thick manila envelope containing the unredacted financial blueprints of his absolute ruin. You just stood there and called me a delusional stalker. Julian, I said, my voice cutting sharply through the heavy, suffocating silence of the room. You looked all your wealthy friends in the eye and claimed I fabricated this entire tragedy. I raised the heavy envelope and threw the documents directly at his polished leather shoes. There is the certified banking routing trace proving you funneled exactly $198,500 of my combat hazard pay into the foundation of this property. Right next to it is the emergency judicial lien approved by the state Supreme Court at 3 p.m. today. You do not own a single square inch of this magnificent estate. You are nothing but a glorified squatter who stole the life savings of a deployed soldier. Before Julian could even open his mouth to formulate another pathetic, desperate lie, the piercing, flashing red and blue lights of multiple law enforcement vehicles violently illuminated the massive front windows. The deafening wail of police sirens tore through the quiet neighborhood night air, completely shattering the last remaining illusions of their elegant high society gala. 4 heavily armed officers from the Financial Crimes Division stormed through the open double doors, their heavy black boots echoing exactly as mine had just minutes prior. Julian Ross, the lead police detective, barked loudly, stepping right over the shattered crystal wine glass and grabbing Julian by the shoulder. You are officially under arrest for grand larceny, massive-scale wire fraud, and felony embezzlement. The detective forcefully spun Julian around, aggressively pulling his arms behind his back. The sharp, heavy metallic click of the steel handcuffs locking tightly around his wrists was the absolute most beautiful sound I had ever heard in my entire life. Julian broke down completely. He began sobbing openly, his ugly tears mixing with the cold sweat on his face. "Morgan, please!" Julian screamed hysterically, as the officers dragged him roughly past his horrified corporate colleagues and the flashing phone cameras. "Morgan, you have to stop them. I am so sorry. We can fix this. Morgan, please help me." I did not blink. I simply watched the flashing red lights swallow him whole as he was shoved forcefully into the back of a waiting police cruiser. Clara was left sitting alone on the wet floor, screaming hysterically as the brutal reality of her complete destitution finally crushed her spirit. She had permanently lost her prestigious executive career, her incredibly wealthy husband, and her stolen luxury sanctuary in a matter of 5 agonizing minutes. She was literally being thrown out onto the cold street with zero financial leverage and nowhere to go. I slowly turned to face Elliot Vance. We exchanged a single, brief nod of mutual professional respect. The devastating partnership was officially concluded. The legal transfer of the property equity will be completely finalized by my attorney tomorrow morning, I told Elliot calmly, my voice steady and professional. I expect the wire transfer of $3 million to clear my offshore trust account by exactly noon. You can keep the custom velvet sofa. A pleasure doing business with you, Miss Allen, Elliot replied, a dark, satisfied smirk crossing his face. I turned my back on the weeping, destroyed woman on the floor and the completely shattered reputation of the lying man I had once loved. I adjusted the heavy canvas straps of my tactical vest, feeling 10,000 pounds lighter. I walked slowly out the grand front doors, stepping out into the cool, cleansing rain of the stormy night. I had survived the deadliest war zone overseas, and I had absolutely decimated the fake one waiting for me at home. I was finally free. Thank you so much for listening to today's story. We hope you enjoyed it, as an ad-free channel. Your support is what keeps us alive. Please support Violet Revenge Stories with just $1 via the QR code on the screen, or click the link in the description box or pinned comment. Also, we'd love to connect with you. Please leave a comment telling us which city or state you're listening from. Thank you for standing with us, and see you in the next stories.